Check one.
Yo, get out of here with them weak ass shoes, yo.
Balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep in love. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep in love.
Welcome, Balls Deep fam, to another episode of Balls Deep, where we dive balls deep into the hottest stories in sports. And as you can see, Jovan is back. He's back. Like he never left. And he got the Silk Dewey on deck. You know, he got to get he got a wave check. We got to wave check him soon.
Nah, if I take this off, that's tsunami. My house gonna flood, bro. Yeah, I have no idea.
We'll wave check you soon. Maybe not at the end of the episode, but soon. But
Let me get my fresh cut. I got you.
all right. But before we get started, you already know what to do. Like, follow, and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure to hit that download button if you're tuning in through Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any of those platforms. If you're watching through YouTube, just make sure to comment. So we can interact with you. We love those. And if you want to share with your friends, we appreciate you, because you know what? That's how we grow as a podcast, as a family, and that's how we're gonna be the best version of ourselves. So continue to show love. We'll show love back. But today's episode, we're talking about some UFC. Yesterday was UFC 260, and it was a wild one. And before we even talk about anything, I want to say here right now, Jovan, you were right.
What?
That
What?
that man,
Tyron
Woodley, is washed. That man is washed.
I knew it. I told you. I caught that shit. I told you,
Bro.
Oh, I fucking told you.
That,
I'm sad. I mean,
I'm sad.
I know I was always hating on Tyron Woodley, but I mean, he was a good fighter. So I'm kind of sad to see it happen, but I fucking told you. I knew it was gonna happen.
Bro, he has not won a round in the past 4 fights at all.
Yeah, he's ranked number 7. I think he got. I mean, talking to Jose about the fights yesterday, and he kind of mentioned how Tyron Woodley was able to get the second fight of the night, but like, I think that was more due to the fact that it wasn't as big a card, but he's washed at this point. I mean.
He got the second fight of the night only because the Ortega Volkanovski fight got
100%.
postponed.
But I mean, at this point, I mean, he might be bottom end of the card. I mean, he's ranked 7 as of yesterday, but he lost to
Number 10.
Vincent Luke, who was number 10. I mean, honestly, at this point, I think he might fall out of the top 10 himself. If not, maybe fall down to where Luke was in B10. Like I said, it sucks. Tyron Woodley is a good fighter, even though I kind of hated on his boring style. But man, I called it. He's washed.
Bro, I'm so mad because I like Tyron Woodley, but like they were talking about I was watching it with my stepbrother, and they were showing the fighters before the fight, and he was talking to his boy saying Tyron Woodley got this, and I'm like, I don't know, man. This man had just lost 3 straight, and then the bell rung, first round, boom. I'm like, okay, he's coming out aggressive. I like it. Usually, he's hesitant, he's conservative, and he's lets the fight come to him. But he went to the fight, and he looked really good in the first round. I'm not up until the point where he got fucking clocked and his legs got stiff. He was fighting a good fight. But what had happened was. He hit homeboy Luke with a nice punch, and he stunned him, but he got too aggressive, and when he went to go pursue it, he was over pursuing, and that's when Luke took advantage of that and tagged him, and his legs got stiff, like super stiff to the boy. Homeboy was like this, and he was trying to stay up, but he had like noodle legs, but his legs wasn't noodles because his shit was raw noodles because it was straight as a board, and it was over after that. And almost when they got to the ground, he should have got knocked out, but when he got to the ground, I felt like he's a wrestler. He should have took more advantage of like his specialty, but he was out of it. You can tell he was out of it because he positioned himself in the worst way possible to get submitted. Like there's no way
Yeah.
out from there.
I mean, Tyron Woodley's like a. I mean, I feel like it's just due to the fact. I mean, I'm pretty sure he's even mentioned it. He just his coach said it. I mentioned it in an episode where we previously talked about Tyron Woodley. His coach said it. When you go into fights and you just feel like you don't even want to fight anymore, it's just he doesn't seem like he's into it. You know, he doesn't seem like he has that dog in him. He doesn't seem motivated to even fight anymore. He really doesn't need to. Honestly, wish he would have retired after the first or second loss in a row. Um, because at this point, I feel like it's just hurting his legacy a bit.
Sure.
I mean, for no reason. I don't see him as like I said, as much as it sucks, I really don't see him competing in the welterweight division anymore. A lot of these guys are really talented. They're hungry.
Do you think
You
he's
know, they've
going
never
to
touched.
go up or down?
I think he should just retire.
Oh, okay.
I think he's good, man. I mean, he's solidified himself as a great welterweight. You know, what I mean, one of the greatest welterweights of all time, regardless if you want to argue about it or not. He still is one of the greatest welterweights of all time. Former champion. I mean, he's won his fights. He's made his money. His mind doesn't seem to be into it anymore. Retire. I mean, if there's any questions about whether or not you have that in you anymore, I think that's just about the time that you need to just call it quits. I mean, I honestly just don't want to see Tyron Woodley keep going in there and getting beat up because, like I said, it sucks to see that happen. It hurts his legacy. At this point, it seems pointless. I mean, we've seen the UFC get rid of a lot of contracts
I was just gonna say
in the last few years because guys, for guys that can't get wins or guys that just are on the outs. And I mean, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if he's, one of the guys that, in the next year is on that list because, I mean, 4 in a row. I mean, you said he hasn't even won a round. I agree. It's you can't have a UFC contract and be doing that bad.
I think that's what's going to happen. I think his contract is up, but I don't think UFC is going to renew it. I think he's going to be on the out, and he's going to be forced to retire. And if he doesn't want to retire, then he's going to be forced to go fight elsewhere. And it almost reminds me. So it's not to the extent, but it almost reminds me of Chuck Liddell. Towards the end of his career, he didn't want to give up fighting, and it was clear as day that he didn't have it anymore. He was losing fight after fight. And to him, he was saying he was winning the fight up until he got knocked out. But the thing is, he was getting knocked out a lot more frequent than in the past. So it almost reminds me of that. I mean, it's not to that extent because Liddell was a lot older, but Woodley just doesn't look like the championship fighter that we knew him to be. Like since he lost to Usman, I felt like it hurt his confidence. Then after Usman, Burns, tore his ass apart in the octagon, and then that diminished his confidence some more. And then he went in against Covington and got thrashed. And now he's like, okay, now I come to the realization that I need to do something. I need to change something, in which he did in the Luke fight, but he just got tagged a lot, and that's kind of what hurt him. And I hope he doesn't have the mindset like, oh, I was winning the fight. Then I got, fucked up. Let me fight another one. I just hope that he just calls it quits because he's washed. Yeah. He's not the same fighter.
I mean, like I said, saying he's washed, I mean, it's harsh. I keep saying it. I mean, you've said it, but obviously I keep saying it. He's a great fighter. I mean, regardless, like I said, he's one of the best of all time. Yeah. I can't deny that. But I don't think we see him in the UFC anymore. Maybe in another promotion. But honestly, I mean, he's done enough. I think he's just hang it up. He's a great fighter, but I think he should just call it quits at this point. I don't think, like you said, he's hurt his confidence, and you can tell. I mean, he's been manhandled quite a few times. You know what I mean? Since he's had that belt, and I just think at this point, a lot of these guys are way ahead of him because we've seen improvements in this game. We've seen him change things up, but not enough to start competing with these guys. Yeah. So if you're not going to compete for this title in this division that's been getting really good since Kamaru took that title.
There's too many young bulls out there.
Yeah, there's too many of them.
I don't know if you want to continue, but I was just going to move on to the next fight.
Oh, no, I mean, I don't know if we were going to speak on, the Sean O'Malley
That's exactly
fight
what I was going to adjust to right now.
Yeah.
Sean O'Malley, we know he lost his last fight, but I think it was all due to injury. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to take anything away from his opponent, but that definitely hindered him and it led to him losing. He came out he had something to prove because people were saying go after his legs, his legs, and you know he should have won the fight earlier by knockout,
Mhm.
but he kind of tried to have that walk off knockout, and
Yeah, yeah.
it almost looked like the ref was going to stop the fight, but he didn't. So then the fight continued on a little bit, and he knocked him out anyway. So he looked his hands looked just as good as they did before. He looked very fast. He looked good. He looks like he's on a vengeance, and he's on he's still on the up and up, and
Yeah.
I think he's gonna end up getting his rematch against homeboy that he lost to, Cheeto
Yeah,
Vera.
Cheeto Vera.
Uh,
I 100%
I think
agree.
he deserves the opportunity to prove himself.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's just what I was gonna say about this fight. I mean, the only reason I won't say the only reason. I won't take it away from Cheeto Vera,
Yeah,
but we definitely have to see. It's a fight we have to see again. At this point, I believe Cheeto is ranked 15, so right at the end of the top 15. But at this point, I mean, Thomas Almeida is a great fighter as well. He's not a bad fighter. He's 22-4.
yeah,
Sean O'Malley, dealt with him easily. So I think at this point, both Cheeto Vera and O'Malley should be top 15. I think he definitely sneaks into the top 15 at this point because, like I said, I mean, he's been killing it. Only reason he did lose was because he was injured. So I think he goes and jumps into that top 15 right around where Cheeto Vera is. And I think you really have no choice at this point but to do that match, to kind of see who takes that step forward between the two of them. Because, like I said, nothing to take away from Cheeto Vera. He went out there and he did what he had to
yeah.
do. Unfortunately, you can't put it against Cheeto Vera that O'Malley got
For sure.
hurt. But at the same time, we need to see that fight go all the way. We need to see who the better guy is before we can decide. All right, how good is not only not only how good is fucking Sean O'Malley, but how good is Cheeto Vera actually as
Yeah. It's
well.
almost
So
like O'Malley's the slump god. I don't want to I don't want to title him
yeah,
that, but I feel like every fight I watched, he's knocking dudes out left and right.
oh
And
yeah,
like you mentioned before, Almeida's a good fighter. The fact that he was able to bounce back after getting stunned the first time and not allow the fight to end just goes to show like that was a quick bounce back, and he's got some heart. But it was just too
yeah,
much for him by the end of the fight that O'Malley put on him. I'd honestly like to see O'Malley get challenged to the point where someone doesn't give him a stand up fight. Because it was almost similar to with the Israel Adesanya fight. That Israel on his feet is ridiculous, but when he got brought down by Jan, we've seen that that's a flaw in his game, and that's something he has to work on. So I want to see someone challenge O'Malley to that extent, like try to take him to the ground and get him off his game, put pressure on him, so that he's not on his feet. Because you give him time, he's gonna pick you apart in a striking battle. So I
yeah.
just want to see someone put pressure on O'Malley for once. But it's just hard because he's so lengthy, and he uses his length to kind of create space and kind of prevent you from getting too close. So I'd like to see someone challenge him in that instance. I don't know how easy it's gonna be. I know it'll be difficult, but I just want to see someone put pressure on him. But
Yeah. No, I mean honestly, like I said, I feel like we got it. That's what makes it tough is the fact that we have him losing to Cheeto Vera, but it was in a way where we're
yeah,
still uncertain. So if we didn't have to deal with that fight right away, in my opinion, I mean, there's plenty of fights in which we could challenge him. I mean, we got Cody Stamann, who's ranked 13, right there in the top 15. We could have gave him like somebody there in the top 15. You know what I mean? Kyler Phillips maybe. So I mean, there's plenty of fights to be made. I think it just makes it a little bit tougher when you have that kind of. It feels like there's kind of something that still needs to be taken
sure.
care of. So that's what kind of sucks about it. It feels like his progression is kind of being stunted by the fact that we need that to be handled first.
It's funny because after his post fight, he was getting interviewed, and you know he was certain he was gonna get that 50K knockout of the night, and then something happened, and he looked over,
Yeah.
put his sunglasses down like he was The Rock, and he was like,
The guy just take him 50,000.
He just took him 50K, and then I believe he was talking about the main event with Francis Ngannou versus Stipe Miocic. This was going to be a dogfight. I still don't understand how Stipe was the underdog going into the fight, because he was the champion. It was kind of shocking to me, and I had Stipe winning the fight, just because of how he handled Francis before. I know Isaiah. I asked him on the podcast, in your absence before we left, who do you have? He said he couldn't go against Ngannou, and I was like, okay. And now I see why. Now he's truly the slump guy because he's knocking dudes out left and right. But I didn't realize, like I felt like Stipe had the blueprint against him. Like you gotta eat those punches to be able to get to him and bring him to the ground. But Ngannou showed improvement from the first fight to the second fight with his takedown defense. And when he prevented Stipe from taking him down, it was a wrap, because then Stipe gave him his back and he was tagging him. And then that was just the start of the beginning of the end, because it just led to the second round where it was a similar situation and he started tagging him, and it was that jab and short hook that just slumped him and folded him like a fucking taco. And I feel bad for Stipe because I like him as a fighter, but he thought it was almost like with Woodley. He thought he tagged Ngannou, and he charged the bull, and he got tagged, and it was a wrap.
I will say this. I still do think, obviously nothing taken away from Francis Ngannou. I love Francis Ngannou. I really can't pick a dog. I couldn't dog in this fight. I wouldn't, because either one of those guys I would like to see win. Both great dudes, both great fighters. But I will say I do still think that Stipe is the better overall mixed martial artist.
Oh, for sure.
I think he is the better heavyweight. I think
he's the greatest of all time.
I think he made some mistakes. Greatest heavyweight. We'll say that.
But yeah, that's what I mean.
I think he made some mistakes, specifically on what you were kind of speaking of. When he thought he tagged Ngannou, he got a little bit more aggressive, got a little too excited, and that's very, very unlike Stipe. So I think that, in all honesty, I think he could have came in end of round 2, round 3, towards that part of the fight, and definitely made some adjustments and ended up winning that fight. I have no doubt in my mind that he would have been capable of doing that. However, like you said, once he caught Ngannou with that one right hook and thought he had him tagged, I mean, he kind of just he smelt blood and thought he was about to finish it, and clearly he thought wrong, because Ngannou was the one who finished it. Like I said, it was a great fight. I love Francis Ngannou. Now we have the conversation with John Jones versus Ngannou, which is obviously another conversation. But it's gonna be a great fight. That last night was a great fight. Obviously we're recording on Sunday, but I think Ngannou has still a lot of work to do. I think he relies too much on that one shot. And I mean, it's when you're a heavyweight, it's a lot easier to be able to do that. But at the same time, you can't just rely on that one shot, especially now when you're going up against a guy like John Jones, who's a completely different level in terms of being a mixed martial artist than really any heavyweight in that entire division.
Yeah.
Because there's really nobody. I mean, there's definitely some good heavyweights. Stipe is one of them. DC is one of them. He's retired now, but there's a few good heavyweights who are very good, very technical, and it's not just about power. But John Jones is far and above any heavyweights from a skill standpoint. So going against him, he's not going to be able to just rely on that one punch.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
And I agree with you 100%. I do think Stipe, he made some mistakes. He is the greatest heavyweight of all time. Let me specify that. I know you already did, but that's what I meant when he said he's the greatest of all time. He's the greatest heavyweight of all time, even though he lost against Francis. And I think he did make some mistakes, and I think it started from the beginning. And I think he tried to stand up with Ngannou too long, instead of trying to continue to try to take him down. Although Ngannou looked like a much better fighter, he showed improvement in terms of his takedown defense, and he was patient. Usually he smells blood and he's aggressive. He goes, but this time he was patient, and he was letting the fight come to him, and that's I think what helped him win this one. I do think Stipe deserves a rematch because they split it 1-1. So I think after maybe the John Jones fight, I think Stipe deserves to fight Ngannou, regardless if um regardless if Ngannou's the champion or not. I would also like to see Ngannou fight Derek Lewis again because the last time he lost to Stipe, he fought Derek Lewis the very next fight, and he lost to Derek Lewis. So I'd like to see him fight Derek Lewis again down the road and kind of try to get his revenge, in a sense. But in regards to the John Jones fight, he's shown improvement, but he definitely has some. He has more improvement to go to be able to fight a technical fight with John Jones because John Jones is not going to get in a striking battle with you.
No. John Jones is not going to stand in front of Francis
He's
Ngannou
going to
to
keep
get
his
punched in the
distance.
face.
He's going to keep his
It's not
distance,
gonna
and
happen.
if he closes out, he's going to close out with an elbow or he's taking you down, and he's gonna he only needs one leg to get a takedown. That's the thing with him. So if
I
I'm in
agree.
Ngannou, I hit up DC, and I understand DC hasn't been successful against John Jones, but no one's been in the octagon as much as DC with John Jones. So DC studied John Jones, and he's that type of fighter you mentioned as a heavyweight. He doesn't rely on that one punch. So the fact that Ngannou will have that in his back pocket, if he can control himself and fight a more technical fight, I think he'll give John Jones problems to the point because John Jones hasn't fought someone with his amount of power, but
I agree.
it,
I,
it's just hard to pick against John Jones in a fight that
I
he's
agree.
involved in.
I mean, because I mean, going into the fight, I already know John Jones is going to go at Ngannou's legs a lot, which is going to stop a lot of
Kicking.
his movement, especially from throwing a lot of those haymakers. But I completely agree. I mean, say what you want about DC, but he's literally one of the smartest fighters ever. And I mean, that's why he does detail for ESPN. He breaks down fights because he's one of the smartest fighters ever. Give him a lot of credit for the reason why Khabib's stand-up got way better than what it used to be, because he trained with a guy like DC a lot. So, I mean, he's a smart fighter, and I completely agree with that. I mean, if you want a good chance at beating John Jones, especially at heavyweight, because a lot of people said, DC lost to John Jones every single time they fought. But if it was at heavyweight, a lot of people felt it could have maybe gone a little bit differently. So, maybe he has, the formula. Maybe he doesn't. Regardless,
He has insight. That's all that
yeah,
matters.
definitely, definitely. So it'll be a great fight regardless. I'm excited. Um, it's probably gonna be the biggest fight in UFC history because it's the greatest fucking fighter in the history of UFC
Against probably one of the
going
scariest
against
fighters.
one of the scariest heavyweights ever. So
Yeah, I mean it's hard to root against Ngannou, so I feel like I'll be rooting for Ngannou in that one, but I'm a fan of John Jones, so it's kind of hard to
uh,
pick against John Jones too because he's a fun fighter to watch.
it's
So
hard to root against Ngannou, but John Jones never lost, so I ain't
so
ever picking against him until he does.
so it's gonna definitely gonna be an interesting fight. A lot of people are already coming out with the narrative that John Jones is scared and he should go down to 185 mainly because of Dana White, which I disagree. He's undefeated. He's not scared of anybody. He's the greatest of all time. Um, and it all started because he tweeted, "Show me the money." But the
Yeah.
dude knows it's gonna be a money fight, so he wants his money. He wants his fair share. He's not gonna go in against someone of Ngannou's like his with his abilities and not get paid. Like you're risking it all to get only
Well,
a small portion. Like you want a bigger pot, especially with that's what you said. Possibly could be the biggest fight of all time.
oh, I think so. I think it'll bring in the most viewers we've ever seen.
Yeah.
I honestly think it'll sell the most pay-per-views ever. And to speak on a little bit what Dana White's saying, I think he's using the scared card in a way to get John Jones to take less money. Because he wants to say John Jones is scared before even having this discussion about money, so that John Jones will take less money because he knows that John's gonna want a shit ton of money. And then if John doesn't take the fight because of the money, he's just gonna say, "Oh, John didn't want the fight." So I don't think it's that John doesn't want the fight. You can say whatever you want about John Jones. People hate John Jones. I get it. You can hate John Jones all you want. You could fucking say he's scared and got him. I guarantee you he's not.
He's not. But you mentioned it before. Uh, Khabib. You mentioned Khabib. He officially retired. Um, and although he said he retired before, Dana White was trying to convince him to come back, and then he basically convinced Dana White like he's done. So Dana White announced that he's officially retired and vacated the title, the light heavyweight title, or no, the lightweight title. My bad. The lightweight title. He vacated it and immediately announced the championship fight between Chandler and Oliveira. And I was kind of confused because they were talking about Gaethje versus Chandler being in the works with one instance, and then Poirier is the most deserving of that division to even be in that title fight. So I was confused. I figured they would do like a little small little tournament then, but now I understand. Like they gave him the option to be in a title fight or fight against McGregor, and he chose McGregor, and he chose the money fight as he should because the direction McGregor's going in, he's not going to be having too many money fights, and he's the money cow in the UFC right now.
He's a cash cow, yeah.
Yeah, he's a cash cow. So go grab the bag. The championship opportunity is still gonna be there for you after that fight, especially if you win.
You win. If you win, undoubtedly, but you gotta win.
Yeah, for sure. And then the Olivier fight is. I was upset that Gaethje didn't fight Chandler because I wanted to see that matchup so bad. But in this matchup, it's going to be a very interesting fight. I do think Oliveira is I think the championship fight is premature for him. I don't think he needed. I feel like he needed one more fight before he got the championship fight. And you could say the same thing about Chandler, just because he just entered the UFC. So it's going to be a really good fight. I'm picking Chandler in that one. I've been a fan of him since he joined the UFC, and I'm even more of a fan after he had that Ric Flair moment at the end. So I think he got a fan for life out of this guy. I don't know. I feel like he convinced me. The WWE fan in me just, kind of pushed towards him after he had that Ric Flair moment. I was like...
No, I mean, it'll be a good fight regardless. I think the fact that I feel you said it, and I'll agree. The fight is premature for both fighters, and I think in that sense, it's makes it perfectly fine for a title fight. As weird as it sounds, I don't think they have the right two guys in the title bout, but I do think the title bout that they wanted to make, they wouldn't have been able to make due to the fact that, like we said, Dustin Poirier wanted the money fight, and I don't blame him either, because if you beat Conor McGregor again, that's probably no longer a money fight, and you don't want to take the chance of
losing out,
fighting for that title. Conor McGregor fights somebody else, loses. He's not a money fight. You don't have that opportunity again. So I think Poirier at this point, if he can beat Conor McGregor, because there's so many question marks about Conor McGregor. I don't know where he's at. What we've seen of him lately hasn't looked good, but I don't want to say that he's not a good fighter. However, I think if Dustin Poirier wins this fight, guaranteed title shot, I think he wins it. I think at the end of this, I think he ends up the champion anyways. I think whoever, if I'm being honest, whoever wins this one between Oliveira and Chandler, to me, is going to feel like it's going to feel more like an interim title. I feel like that's where Dustin Poirier is just going to come and be like, all right, I'm going to solidify myself as champion. Because at this point, I think he's the guy that should have been given the belt. I wouldn't have had no problem if the UFC handed him the belt, if I'm being honest with you. But they didn't. And at the end of the day, I think they're going to have to anyways, because I think he's going to go out there and he's going to get it. So I think this division will figure itself out in the end anyways. But regardless, I feel like we're kind of getting extra fights out of it because Dustin Poirier kind of declined. You know what I mean? So I'm not upset about it.
I'm interested to see what they do with Gaethje, because now he's the odd man out. He almost kind of wanted to sit out and just go for another title fight, but clearly has to fight for another fight. And with Khabib retiring, the number one guy is Poirier, and he's fighting McGregor, who I believe is number 6. And then you have Chandler, who's 4, and Olivier, which is 3.
3. Yep.
So Gaethje's 2, and 5, I believe, is Ferguson. And he's not fighting Ferguson. Again,
Not again.
not again.
Not.
So Ferguson's gonna fight someone lower.
If it was a lot closer fight, I could see it happening. I
I
mean,
think
maybe
I
he
think
fights a Dan Hooker.
Dan Hooker, but I was thinking more of a Rafael dos Anjos.
Yep.
I think that might
All
be
right.
the better fight.
RDA would be a good fight as well.
I think RDA might be the go-to for Gaethje, but Gaethje's got to fight somebody. And now that he's gonna fight someone lower, I feel like he's gonna have to fight 2 more fights to get a championship fight because
Yeah.
he's not gonna be next in line. Next in line is Poirier if he wins. So if you have to be let's say you fight RDA, he has to be RDA and then wait for one of those top fighters to open up to then fight. So maybe he fights the loser of the Chandler Oliveira fight. But I think before that he has to probably fight somebody else.
Who knows?
But it sets up almost a small little tournament, but it's not the way I wanted. I'm pretty sure it's not the way a lot of fans wanted. But it is what it is. And Dana White, before that, announced UFC 261 is going to be in Jacksonville, Florida. And it's going to be the first pay-per-view in almost a year with a full crowd, which everyone's excited for. He said it sold out in minutes. So, and it's headlined by Kamaru Usman, Jorge Masvidal 2. So it's official. We're all excited. But then it's followed by Zhang Weili and Rose Namajunas. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right.
Actually, I think it's followed by Valentina and Jessica Andrade first.
Well, no,
If
regardless, I was gonna name
okay.
them too, but the Valentina Jessica Andrade fight is there too. So those are the
Mhm.
3 championship fights, and I'm excited because Jang, she had a dog fight, probably the greatest fight I've ever seen, like, and now that she's coming back and she's defending her title against Rose, who is amazing at what she does. And then,
Definitely
and
former champion.
And then Valentina, I've mentioned it before. I think she's the only one who can beat Amanda Nunes or has a chance to beat Amanda Nunes. Now she's defending her title against Jessica Andrade, who has been dominant in her past few fights. So like now she has something to prove as well. Because if she can handle Andrade, maybe she opens the window for the third fight in the Nunes trilogy. So
Yeah.
this is gonna set up some good matchups to follow, but I'm excited for this pay-per-view. How about yourself?
No, I'm stoked for this card. I mean, it's a huge card. Kamaru Usman, Jorge Masvidal, obviously both getting a full camp. It is a title fight. It is a title fight. So, I mean, we're getting 3 title fights like we did in UFC 259, which was a huge card as well. So, like, obviously the UFC is trying to push out a lot of fights, but I mean, Zhang Weili, Rose Namajunas, a great fight. Champion versus former champion. Which, if I'm not mistaken, she actually beat Rose for the title. Valentina, Jessica Andrade. Andrade is really good, but like you said, if Valentina beats Andrade, that might set up a third fight between her and Nunes. A lot of people think, same as yourself, she's the only person that they've seen come close. I don't think she does it in the third fight, but at this point, if she beats Andrade, there's really no other fighter for either of these girls. So obviously, that's another huge fight down the road. But I mean, it's just a stacked card because we even have after those 3 fights, you got Uriah Hall, Chris Weidman, Anthony Smith, and Jim Crute. I mean, Alex Oliveira, Randy Brown. There's a lot of good fights in this. So it is a stacked card. I'm excited.
I'm excited for the fans to be back, even though I'm not there. Although I would love to attend an event, down the road. Although I'm not there, I'm still excited because the UFC, when they made the transition to no fans, like, yes, I'm excited that there was UFC, but it just felt a little weird. Like, it was just very dead silent to the point where we heard the announcers.
I don't know. I liked it.
No, no, I'm not saying I didn't like it. I actually did like it, but I'm saying it just felt a little weird at first because like you heard like the corners talking. Usually you don't hear the corners talking. The fighters heard the announcers, like the announce table, speaking. So that was kind of like there was awkward silence here and there, but I liked it because you got the kind of the inside scoop. Like you were able to hear the corner, kind of give them pointers throughout the fight, which you typically don't do unless it was in between rounds. But now with the fans, it's going to bring in different energy, and hopefully it'll help the fighters, with the momentum or even just have the fans rally behind them and kind of give them a burst of energy. So I'm excited on that aspect.
I agree. I mean, I agree. I am excited on that aspect. I did love watching the fights with no fans, especially seeing. I mean, getting to hear like the hits. I mean, you really get to hear them. Especially because I mean, when we was watching the Aljamain Sterling Peter Yan fight, and Peter Yan kicked the shit out of Sterling. I mean, you hear that shit so loud. So I mean, just watching it was definitely exciting. But bringing the fans definitely brings a whole other energy. Every time there's a nice combo thrown, you hear the excitement. Every time somebody's doing something, I mean, the fans telling fighters when they want more from a fight because it's not a good fight, obviously. Those are things that fighters are capable. No fans, but I mean, I'm excited. I'm excited. It gives us a lot less excuses for Israel Adesanya to avoid John Jones as well now. So
Listen,
I,
that's not happening anymore. I mean,
I don't know.
there's a small chance that it'll happen now, but after him losing to Jan, I think he has to prove himself. He has to beat Jan and probably some other people before he gets a chance at John Jones.
I don't disagree. It's a stupid fight, especially after seeing him lose to a guy like Jan. I just think it's even worse. Not to say that Jan's a scrub, but it clearly had to do with size. The fact that he couldn't finish the fight because he wasn't fighting a horrible fight. He was actually, I think, winning that fight. But Jan overall just kind of manhandled him and was like, I need these rounds. I'm going to take your skinny ass down. And that's what he did. And if Jan was capable of doing that, John Jones is going to rip his arms off. Because not only is John Jones huge now, but John Jones' BJJ is 100 times better than what Jan's is. He's going to be able to take Israel Adesanya down almost at will if Jan basically was able to. So we don't know. But I definitely think we need to see a lot from Izzy. I definitely think he needs to take the weight a little bit more serious because he didn't this time. And so I don't. Obviously, a lot of people are like, well, he didn't go up in the weight the right way. He still fought good. I get it, but that's your fault. You chose to go up.
He put himself at a disadvantage.
Yeah, you put yourself at a disadvantage. I mean, you can't use that as an excuse, knowing that's what you did going into it. You know what I mean? Like.
And I get his thought process behind it. He didn't want to lose his speed because he had the speed advantage. But at the same time, he manhandled you because of his size. Like, he was able to take you down, and not only take you down, he basically pinned you down because you couldn't do anything once you got to the ground. Like, it was almost like the fight. Once he took him down, and I realized like Adesanya wasn't able to do anything. I'm like, the fight's over because now Jan's just going to continue to take him down, which he did. And I was confused on why he didn't do that sooner. But the Adesanya going into the fight was saying that he had a submission in his back pocket. Like, so if you had a submission in your back pocket, clearly you worked on, your ground game, but you didn't work on it well enough to be prepared. Like, I'm not saying he wasn't prepared because he was winning the fight. I had him winning 2 rounds to none after the first 2, and then I had him winning the next 3. But I underestimated Jan's ability, his ground game, because his ground game was phenomenal. Like that fight, he proved himself to a lot of people, including myself.
100%. But not only that, I mean, it's like just speaking of the weight at disadvantage. I mean, you can't go around into a fight at 190 and your opponent weighs in at 205, but he's walking around the ring at 220. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, because Adesanya did not gain much weight after his weight.
Not at all. He's probably weighed in what he was going to fight on. You know what I mean? Basically.
Yeah, exactly. But back to UFC 261. The fight I'm looking forward to the most is the Zhang Rose fight. I feel like that's going to be a dog fight, and I'm excited. Just because Zhang's last fight and what I've witnessed already from Rose, I'm excited. You mentioned that they fought in the past, so Rose, if she did lose, because I didn't watch that fight.
Rose, I believe they fought in the past. I'm pretty sure that's who Rose lost her belt to.
So if she did, then it'll be nice to get a 2.0 second fight. If they didn't, I'm still excited because I think it's both females.
It's the first fight.
Yeah, both females are dogs. Like they're gonna
100%. This is
they're
gonna
gonna
be an
go
amazing fight.
they're gonna go all out. I think this might be fight of the night. And as much as I'm excited for Usman and Masvidal because they both have full camps and they're both preparing for each other, I'm saying this is gonna steal the show.
Oh, 100, I think. See, I think I 100%. Sorry, I'm losing my shit right now. 100% understand what you're saying because stylistically, this is the best fight.
Yeah.
No doubt. I mean, we saw what happened between Zhang Weili and I forget who she fought last. The Polish girl. Megamind when she left her that big ass.
I know who you're talking about. That's the fight I'm referring to too.
Exactly, and I mean, Rose is just as much of a dog as she is. I mean, they're both gonna stand up. And they're both just gonna strike with each other. I honestly think we're gonna get another similar fight to what we saw in that fight. And I mean, we're gonna. In my opinion, I think we're probably gonna get another fight of the year candidate.
Joanna, she fought Joanna.
Yeah, Joanna. So I honestly think we're gonna get another fight of the year candidate.
Bro.
So I completely agree. Stylistically, I think this is probably one of the best fights on the card.
And before she fought Joanna,
at least out of those three, at least out of those top.
And before she fought Joanna and beat her, she knocked out Andrade, who's now fighting Valentina for her title. So,
yep.
She's someone you don't want to mess with. And Rose, with her experience and championship experience, I'm interested to see her tactics in going in against a fighter like Zhang. But the fact that Zhang's been out for so long because of obviously COVID and protocols and things like that, I'm interested to see how fresh she looks. Does she have to knock off that ring rust? That we shall see. But I'm excited. I think this is gonna be the fight of the night. You mentioned possible fight of the year candidate. So. This is only going to be April, so we got a whole 8 other months to go. So
I mean, we got a possible John Jones and Ngannou fight in the fall. So I mean,
that says a lot.
That's another one. We got another McGregor and Poirier fight coming up.
Yeah.
A possible Poirier against whoever wins the championship, or even McGregor again. I mean, with fans. I mean, it's going to be huge.
It's going to be big. UFC's got a big year ahead of them. But that's all we have for you guys today. We hope you guys enjoyed the content. Stay tuned because, we got more content on the way. If you haven't been paying attention to the NFL, we mentioned in our NFL mock draft that, things were going to change between mock draft 1.0 and mock draft 2.0. And we were going to include trades in our mock draft. But trades are already happening in the NFL. If you haven't been paying attention, the 49ers, they traded up from 12 to 3. With the Dolphins then took the 12th pick and traded back up to 6 with the Eagles. So the Eagles are now at 12. So those moves are official. Our moves are unofficial, but, our insight and our opinion is always official. So stay tuned because mock draft 2.0 is gonna happen. The draft's at the end of the month or the end of April, so we'll definitely get it before then, so you guys can have a glimpse of our insight going into the draft on some few prospects. But stay tuned for all these hot topics and content we got for you. Go participate in our poll of the week. Every week, every Wednesday. Our guy Isaiah, he comes through all the time. So just make sure to go show some love and interact with us there. And until next time, peace.
You're talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. We're talking about balls deep in love. I'm talking about balls deep. My boy's talking about balls deep. We're talking about balls deep in love.